We started talking in the last video about verb tenses, how to form the verb tenses. I want to continue with that conversation today, but I want to talk about how to use verb tenses in your writing. Anytime you're telling a story, and this is especially true in fiction, verb tenses can be really useful because what they're going to do is allow you to show how a series of events are related in time. What came first, what came next, what's going to happen but hasn't happened yet. All of those things can be told if you know how to use verb tenses properly. When you're writing about the present time, something that's happening right now, you have some options. You can use simple present tense, present progressive form, present perfect tense, or present perfect progressive form. Now I know those sound kind of complicated, but I'm going to show you how to tell what they are, and I think you'll see that you already use them, you just didn't know what name to call them. So let's begin with simple present tense. Simple present tense can be seen in this example. I like to read about real-life adventures. I especially enjoy stories in which people struggle against nature. All of the verbs in those sentences are simple present tense verbs. They're not past tense. They don't have a participle ending like ing. They're just plain, straightforward verbs. This allows us to write about the present time very easily. When you're using the present progressive form, that's when it starts to get a little bit more interesting. As you can see in this example, the verbs are present participle forms because they end in ing, and they use a helping verb, in this case, the be verb am. But it could be a different be verb if we were using third person instead of first person. For example, if it said he is reading instead of I am reading, same concept, just a different form of the be verb. So that's present progressive form. If you're using present perfect, which we have talked about before, again, this has a helping verb. In this particular example, we're going to use the verb have. So far, I have learned that Yossi is a young Israeli man who is on an adventure through the rainforest of Bolivia. Because we're using the first person I narrator, we would use have. If it was he or she, we would use has. That's present perfect tense. If we're using the present perfect progressive, we're going to take that same helping verb, have or has, add a be verb, been, and use the present participle that ends in ing. Here's the example. I have been trying to resist the urge to skip ahead in the book. So you're pulling a lot of verbs together, but that's present perfect progressive form of the verb. Let's say we want to write about the past instead of the present. Well, we have verb tenses for that too. By using these tenses correctly, it's so much easier for readers to follow the events that you're writing about. So let's look at some past tense verb forms. Start with simple past tense. Yossi Ginsberg traveled to Bolivia in the 1980s. He explored the rainforest near the Tuichi River. Now these are simple, straightforward past tense verbs. These happen to be regular verbs, so we make them past tense by putting an ed on travel and a d on explored. All good. These are very simple past tense forms. There are other past tense forms though too. The past progressive. Now remember we had the present progressive and it used a be verb. This is past progressive, so it's going to use a past tense of the be verb. We have a singular, was, and a plural, were. Our verb is still the present participle that ends in ing. Our examples. At first, Yossi was traveling with 3 men. They were searching for a remote Indian village and gold. It's the same concept. We've got the present participle form of the verb, it ends in ing, and we've used a be verb as our helping verb. We have past perfect tense. This is going to use the helping verb. In the last example, what we used a perfect tense, we used the have as our helping verb. In this case, because it's past, we're going to use had, because that's the past tense of the verb have. After the men had experienced difficult travel for several weeks, 2 of them gave up and headed back to civilization on foot. Had experienced. We've got the past participle form of the verb along with the helping verb, and that's past perfect tense. We can also use past perfect progressive. Yossi and the remaining man, Kevin, had been trying to raft down a dangerous river when they became separated. Anytime you're using a progressive form, just remember it's going to have three parts. Past perfect progressive is going to be the past tense of a verb, had, a helping verb of the be family, been, and the present participle, had been trying. But it's going to have three parts. If you can remember that your verb's going to have three parts, it's easy to know that you can easily use the perfect progressive forms of a verb. What about writing about the future? There's future tenses. This gives us a chance to describe what will happen, or what might be happening, or what will have happened by some point in the future, depending on what verb tense we choose. So let's take a look at those. Let's start with simple future tense. Simple future tense tells us something is going to happen in the future, but it hasn't happened yet. Look at the example. When you get to the part where Yossi has been left alone in the rainforest, you will be eager to find out what happened. This form of the verb uses a helping verb, will, and the be verb. Then we know exactly what's going on. It's the simple future form. It tells us something is going to happen in the future. We can also have future progressive. And if you look, it's got three parts. Yossi will be trying to make it out of the jungle with the help of only a few supplies. Anytime you're using a progressive form, it's going to end in ing. It's going to be that present participle form of the verb. It's going to have two helping verbs if it's a progressive form. In this case, we have will and be. But here we have a really simple form that we can use to say something will be happening in the future. We also have future perfect. You may wonder if any wild animals will have attacked Yossi before he reaches the nearest village. Future perfect is going to tell us something that could be happening in the future before something else happens in the future. If you look at this sentence, the last thing in the sentence that's going to happen is Yossi will reach a village. But before that, he might be attacked by animals. So future perfect says something's going to happen in the future before something else happens in the future. And finally, we have future perfect progressive. This has a lot of verbs. Still going to end with a present participle that ends in ing. But we have three helping verbs in front of this. Will, have, been. This is a long verb form. Yossi will have been causing you to lose a lot of sleep at night before you get to the end of his book. Future perfect progressive is going to be the longest verb form that you can use. It has a lot of helping verbs, and it ends in the ing form of the verb, the present participle. But it is a verb form that will allow you to talk about something that's going to happen in the future using the correct tense. So verb tenses. It's important to understand how they work so that your message can be made clear to your readers.